Welcome to the All Eers podcast, powered by HD Media.
All right, everyone, long time, no talk. Just kidding, we spoke last week. But anyway, welcome into a brand new edition of the All Eers podcast. I'm your host, Taylor Kennedy. Thank you all for joining us. However you may be listening to us, you can find us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, along with YouTube as well. You can follow us on social media with the links in the description below. On Facebook with our brand new Facebook page, All Eers, for all the latest coverage of the Mountaineers. And you can go on our website, wvgazettemail.com, to find that as well. You can also follow us on Twitter at Gaz Mail Sports, that's Gaz Mail Sports. And we're continuing along our summer interview series, and we've already had a plethora of great guests as well. Last week we spoke with Kevin Jones, former WVU forward that played on that Final Four team back in 2010, and we're continuing along. I know we're going basketball heavy, but sometimes whenever you're cooking you're cooking the right material, you're cooking the right ingredients, you're making a really good product, and the basketball guests seem to be doing really well. So we're going to continue along that, and we're pleased to be joined today by another former Mountaineer forward in Elijah Macon. He played at WVU from 2013 to 2017, a Columbus, Ohio native, and we are pleased to be joined by Elijah now. Elijah, welcome to the program, my friend.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thanks for having me, man.
Absolutely. Well, my man, you were back in the Mountain State. I know you and I talked this past weekend at KJ's camp, but kind of walk me through, what was it like for you being back home, being around some of the youth here in the Mountain State, and just being around some Mountaineer fans again?
Man, it was great coming back, man. I honestly can't say I think I haven't been back to Morgantown since that first team I played for on the TBT. So it's been a while, man. It was good to come back to West Virginia and see the mountains again and see the kids, some old teammates, some old staff members, all types of stuff, man. It was good.
When you come back to West Virginia, and you see the hills for the first time, and you see the roads, and you see the Coliseum and Morgantown and everything else, what comes to mind for you? Is it more memories than anything? Is it just a sense of home? What goes through your mind whenever you come back home?
Definitely a peace of mind. Definitely home feeling, a great feeling, like we built the home that we built, the time being that we were here and the things that we did do. It just felt good to be back. I haven't been back in a while. It definitely feels like going back to Columbus just without the city vibes, but to me, it's just definitely a great feeling to always go back, see the campus, see what's new on campus, see what they did new, to the facility and all these stuff. So since I haven't seen the Coliseum in so long either.
So when you do walk back through the practice facility, I know you kind of posted some stuff on your Instagram story over the weekend, but just seeing that and just seeing how far that's come along and just the progressions that they've made in that facility, and even just seeing the Coliseum and just getting the flooding of memories back as well. How unique, how memorable, and how special was that for you just to be able to do that? Because I know you're also with Brandon Watkins as well. So what was that like for you?
Man, it was great, man, for us to go back in there. Just as soon as I walked in that facility, all I can just remember us, going hard for those 3 hours that we used to practice some days. Just memories, immediately memories, from the weight room to conditioning to all types of stuff, man, we had going on while we were there. Even with study hall, like I miss my old study hall room. Like I'm just missing stuff I haven't seen. Going to the Coliseum, seeing it got a new name and all types of stuff. I was just like, man, these guys got it good now. But it was good to go back and see, everything that we worked for the guys to have it now,
Yeah, no, absolutely. So whenever you saw the signage that said Hope Coliseum, did that kind of throw you off a little bit? I know you knew it as the Hope Coliseum or the Coliseum. That Hope Coliseum probably threw you off a little bit, huh?
Yeah, we ain't need no hope. We was just playing hard. So we was like, hope, we don't need no hope in here. Y'all need to take that down.
Well, you mentioned the memories of just the study hall room and the weight room and the practice facility and all that. More good or more bad memories? Just when I mean bad, I mean just all the physical, physical wear and tear that you had to do, whether it be on the treadmill or just sprints or whatever it may be. Was it more good or was it more the physical bad?
Just more of coming to realization of how really busy I really was while I was at school because, we obviously didn't have the same regular schedule as the regular student. So just actually realizing how busy we actually were and how separate we actually were from all the other students, from the football players, from just, I think, the student athletes, we have a different living compared to the regular, college life. So I think that just kind of hit my realization of, how much we actually were just not involved with the actual other students because we were gone so much. We were in our own area as far as the basketball facility. It was good memories, man, as far as, just seeing how far I've came, knowing that, I graduated from this great school and just coming back to see everything that, I basically worked for to be doing now in life,
Yeah, so take me back to you being a young basketball player in Columbus, Ohio. I know you went to Brewster Academy before you came to WVU, but talk to me about what basketball was like for you growing up as a kid. What was basketball like for you in the grand scheme of things, and how did you kind of see the game really progress in your eyes as you continue to develop and go along as a player?
Man, growing up in Columbus was great, man. It was, basically growing up around nothing but basketball. I had a basketball family. My father played basketball. My grandfather, my uncles, they all played. Were pretty good in high school, I would give them, but, never really got to play at higher levels than that. Some got to play a little bit in college, but not really what, the extent of what I got to do in my basketball career. Starting young, it was very competitive, man, growing up in Columbus, man. You had guys like Trey Burke, Jared Sellinger, J.J. Sellinger, LeBron James was still in high school. I was growing up, so you got to think all these guys. There's in Ohio, Michael Redd, just a lot of guys coming out of Columbus around that time. Young guys, guys didn't really know about, just hard grit, hard-nosed basketball stuff that was going on growing up. Getting ranked early and all types of stuff just kind of helped me grow into coming into college, because I was playing up at such a young age and playing with guys that weren't my age at all. So I would be 15, trying to play with 26, 30-year-old guys, up on Ohio State campus, playing with the Buckeyes sometimes or just playing up on campus sometimes. So it was honestly really great situation for me growing up in Columbus as far as the basketball-wise, because it was a lot of basketball and good competition around the time, It's changed now, but back when I was growing up, it's really good for you.
So you mentioned just how you were sought after in the recruiting process. I was looking at your 24/7 sports recruiting profile before we did this podcast, and dude, you're a 4-star recruit coming out of high school. So walk me through that recruiting process. And I want to ask you this because I don't really ask too many athletes this, but I want to start with this with you. When you're getting sought after by so many different schools, and at the same time, this basketball, I don't know if persona is the correct word, or just this profile that you're creating that people are like attaching themselves to and recruiting you and offering you. How did you go about balancing all of this pressure from these online sources while at the same time just continuing just to be you as a basketball player and just continue to focus on the game that you love? How did you go about doing that?
Just having a good support system around me, good mentorship. Honestly, just listening to my grandfather and my mom that was around before my mom passed away. Just having great mentorship, honestly, that came down to that. Like I said, I used to hang around guys like Jared Sellinger, who was #1 ranked player in the country. I would be around him all the time. So he would be on the phone with Kyrie Irving or Harrison Barnes, or I would just be around him a lot, soaking up the game. From my high school in Marion Franklin, I went to Herb Williams, which is, I don't know if he's still the general manager or one of the managers with the Knicks. He was also, a good mentor in my life growing up, also, as well as Gary Trent. They used to play for the Minnesota Timberwolves with Kevin Garnett. I had a lot of basketball mentors, a lot of guys that were keeping me on track, I would say, outside of my family, but just like basketball heads that would stay in my corner, saying on me about certain things and not doing certain stuff and doing things this way and doing things that way, And I would big up on Jared Sellinger on that because he definitely was like a big part of being a role model at my young age, just helping me along the way. And watching him as well, how he dealt with being the #1 player ranked in the country, was also a really big, and it was good to be around,
So you mentioned Jared a few times, and I love the fact that you're bringing that up again. Former Ohio State Buckeye, Jared Sullinger, and just continue along that avenue I'm going down. So, what did Jared mean to you? I know you've hinted at it, but just kind of expand on that a little bit. What did Jared Sullinger mean to you during your basketball journey? Now that you look back on it, almost 15 years later.
It was huge, man. Jared had a huge impact on my life. I would say because, like I said, I got to see him doing things out of a neighborhood that we all grew up in. He was just kind of one of those guys that were a solid guy. He did his schoolwork. He was getting ready to go to Ohio State. It was big, man. It was just more of I wanted to compete against Jared. I never wanted to play with Jared. I always wanted to learn from him and, beat him at what he was doing because he was older than me. So that was my thing. I always took what Jared was telling me and then use it against him when I played him, or use whatever I was learning from watching him and use it against him when I played him, or whenever I got a chance to play up against him or whatever it was, I was going at Jared. So as far as the competitive wise, he helped me. I would say just being more hard-nosed and ready as far as playing aggressively that I needed to do. And my IQ kind of grew like a lot from just watching him and working out with him. So I would say definitely just on that tip, as far as the basketball-wise, he just helped me polish up a lot of my basketball skills.
What's the biggest thing, just outside of Jared, but what's the biggest thing that you take away from whether it be growing up or in high school that you took away from that helped you early on whenever you were competing in practice and in workouts whenever you arrived at WVU?
Oh, man, I would just say, honestly, being so knuckleheaded and hard-headed, man, I really didn't know what I was getting myself into when I came to college. College was just, once I graduated high school, man, it was just more of a I want to go play basketball. I'm kind of done with school, but I understood, I really had to lock in and still do school stuff. So I learned a lot outside of school stuff to just handle my business, first, come in and do what I need to do so I can go have fun later. The simple stuff that your parents tell you all the time, but you never want to listen to it. Don't really hit you until you got to go sit in the study hall and you got a guy like Bob Huggins, ready to put you on the line if you're not really handling your business off the court.
So you mentioned West Virginia, and we're continuing to talk with Elijah Macon, former WVU forward for those Bob Huggins teams in the middle portion of the 2010s. But Elijah, when you look at the early recruiting process with WVU, do you remember whenever WVU first arrived onto the scene for you recruiting, and what were those conversations like for you early on?
Well, mind you, man, like I said, I was coming out of 8th grade, like the number one ranked player going into high school for my class in 2012 in Ohio. So I would say West Virginia has been around since like coming out of 8th grade, man, like really like around 2008, 2009, going into my freshman year of high school. So I can remember those conversations not too well, but I can remember meeting Hugs and just really watching that Final Four team and getting invited to their elite camp that they were having. It was so weird. I was watching the team that year. I was just now like starting to become a fan of the West Virginia basketball team from when Joe, all those guys were playing, Deshaun and Ebanks, and those were basically the guys that recruited me. But when I got invited to come to that elite camp, that kind of changed everything for me, man. I really didn't know too much about Morgantown. I knew about Bob Huggins being at Cincinnati, but I didn't know too much about West Virginia itself. I knew it was close to home. I didn't know, all these other things that it came with as far as the mountains and the scenery and all this stuff. So I would just say that early process was just me, whether you call being gullible to a lot of things. And just, kind of being in my head, being the big guy, because I, like I said, number one player ranked in the state and all this stuff. So I was just taking it on not really that serious because I was new to it, I would say. And it was just more of a shock to me, honestly, that I was starting to get recruited from top school like that. So it was just more of I was just taking it all in and just being a kid at the time, honestly, and not really looking at it as an opportunity, what it came. But at the time, it was just more of a, hey, like, it's cool. Like, hey, I'm starting to get, my offers and stuff.
So when you got to college, and you mentioned how just taking it more serious, I want to ask you this before we take a quick break, but whenever you got to college and you said that you wanted to take it more seriously, was it more of a sense of realization for you? Was it like an epiphany almost? Like how did that transpire? I know I asked you about how basketball came about early on, but you mentioned how when you got to college it was a little bit different. How did that focus change for you, especially early on at WVU?
It changed a lot, man. I would say just because I had to mature so fast. I was but basically, head of my household, helping my mom take care of, things as far as helping being a man of the house. So I had to really lock in, and it helped me lock in by going to those prep schools before I even entered campus, going to Huntington and going to Brewster. Just locking in on certain school stuff and just being off and doing stuff like that kind of helped me prepare also going on to be at college because I was already off at prep school on my own, another state, not in my home state, and just kind of really doing a lot of maturing before I came into school because, still on childish stuff and had to get my time schedule and all types of things together before, I just entered campus and, screwed up.
So we're going to take a quick break here. We're continuing our conversation with Elijah Macon, and we will continue this conversation on the other side of this break. And we'll talk more with Elijah just about Hugs and also some more WVU memories, and we'll do so on the other side of this break. This is All Ears.
HD Media Game Day is your streaming home for the best in live high school sports across West Virginia. Featuring football, basketball, soccer, and more, HD Media Game Day brings the action to you for free, exclusively on our YouTube channel and at hdmediagameday.com. When you can't make it to the game, HD Media Game Day has you covered.
Oh, good gravy. The kind made from real premium sausage. The kind that's smothered over deliciousness. The kind you can only get at Tudor's Biscuit World. That's the gravy that's oh so good. It's the perfect topping to your biscuits or your taters, and even makes a delicious side. It's oh so good gravy. Tudor's Biscuit World. We're dripping with oh good gravy.
Welcome back into the latest edition of the All Ears podcast. I'm your host, Taylor Kennedy. Thank you all for joining us. We're joined by former WVU forward Elijah Macon, and we spent the first portion of this interview talking about growing up in basketball, being in a basketball family, maturing a lot, as you mentioned. But Elijah, I'll go back to you. When you look at Coach Huggins and who he was, not only here in West Virginia, but also in the state of Ohio. Obviously, his family, he had a lot of family from Ohio. He's from Morgantown, played at WVU, but people remember him a lot from his time at WVU, but also what he did at Cincinnati as well. So when you talk about Coach Huggins, and especially growing up in the Columbus area, which is semi-close to Cincinnati, talk about Coach Huggins, and then when that name was brought up in Ohio, did you already kind of know of him before recruiting started getting big, especially whenever WVU got into the scene, or how did you start to hear about Coach Huggins early on?
Like I said, I was always a fan of Coach Huggins from what he did at UC and everything with like Ken Martin and all those guys. I kind of picked up, loving how he took care and let his bigs play like that. So that was definitely big for me. I kind of already knew, like I said, picked up on Hugs though from just watching him at UC. His name was definitely big within the household of Marion Franklin because the school colors were kind of like Cincinnati's. So we kind of resembled and had like school jerseys that looked like Cincinnati's black jerseys. Kind of also had guys from Marion Franklin, my school I used to go to, named John Williamson, who was also recruited by Eric Martin. That was, one of the head assistant coaches while I was there. So that was kind of big to know one of the guys from my neighborhood was recruited by the same guy that's, being coached by now in West Virginia. So it made a big deal, man. Honestly, just knowing that all the Cincinnati family was so close to a lot of people that I knew back home in Columbus. It kind of made it more comfortable for me to, go ahead and make that jump, to go ahead and, start being recruited with West Virginia and talking to Hugs more.
So let's talk about Coach Hugs. And I want to ask you this because I know whenever you and I spoke over the weekend, I could just hear how much he cared for you. And it showed as well during Kevin Jones's camp in South Charleston that, what you did out, and you can agree with this if you'd like, but it just seemed like how you and Brandon and even Kev were too. That a lot of times comes back to how you were in college and just going to camps, doing those youth camps in college as well, and just with Coach Hugs. How much of a role model was he and still is to this day? But also, what are some things that you took away from him in college that you still apply to yourself, apply to your life, and you still remember to this day?
Oh man, Coach was how would I explain him off that? Like a true alpha, man. Like just finally getting to see certain things that you can take from him, like his attitude, how he carries himself within public, how he, gets loud and is rowdy, how passionate he is about the game, and how passionate he will show you he is about the game. It's a lot, man. I would say I took from him a lot. Me and Hugs, had a different type of relationship. We both lost our moms to cancer, unfortunately. So I believe me and him clicked on a different level more than like other people. That's just me personally. Me and him would have talks. I have my attitude. I would have my days where I wasn't just in it, and he would talk to me, about things that he had to go through to stay in it and stay motivated. So I would say stuff like that, man. Me and Hugs kind of just clicked on more of a father-son situation. We would have our arguments and we would still be cool and be able to bring it back in because we both knew, what we have been through as far as losing our moms together and how you have to deal with life, losing a parent and stuff and getting through basketball and getting through stuff you have to take care of without your loved ones. So I believe me and him clicked on a different level. Also him got to meet my mom, coming to Columbus, coming to my house in Columbus for a house visit, coming to eat food with my family, all types of stuff, man. I believe me and him just clicked on a different level. And I could say, 100% I can take from him his leadership and how he took roles and how he led us to things, and controlled us in bad situations where we were getting down, or how he would, of course we would have our bad days with practice, but we would have a lot of good days too. A lot of people don't really talk about the fun that we have. You hear about the crazy stuff with Hugs, but we don't talk too much about the fun that he does have. He's a very fun guy. Go out, besides, adult, stuff for people we drink, we do what we do. But Hugs is a very funny guy, man. He's very funny. He's very down to earth, and he has a lot of stories. He's very humble, it just makes you want to be around him and learn all that you can,
No, absolutely. So when you look at his style and who he was, obviously he embodied West Virginia during his time as the coach of the Mountaineers, just in the physicality, the toughness, the grit, and everything else. Talk about the Press Virginia days, because it seemed like you were there right around the time of the conception of that and how that all started to develop. I think it was, I don't want to go too far off track, but I think it was like 2014, 2015, or 15, 16, whenever the Press Virginia system really started working and started catching national attention. So what was that like just in the adoption stages of Press Virginia? How did you kind of see yourself fit into all of that?
It was honestly a good shock to me, honestly, man, I would say, because like I said, I was watching that Final Four team and coming in, a whole different style of play coming in. They weren't pressing. They would do like a half court press, but they wasn't full court pressing. So that was kind of a shock to me to come in and just knowing, how we would be playing. But once we got used to it and, all the recruits and all the guys got to know each other and who could do what, it became very dangerous for guys to play against us, We made our good runs, within the time that I was there, from playing with Jawan, from playing with Gary Brown, from playing with Javon Carter, to all the guys that I got to play with, Devin Williams, the guys, everybody that I got to play with, man, was just a great, because everybody bought in to, what Hugs was trying to do. And once, we kind of figured out what we were doing and how we were going to do it, I would say it was really fun, man, getting out there and be able to play and kick some ASS,
So I want to ask you this, because a lot of times we hear from youth athletes, youth coaches, parents as well, and just how the welcome to college or the realization is as to the differences between high school and college. So from this angle, I'll ask, you are obviously one of the more sought-after high school recruits out of the state of Ohio, and even nationally at the time. And you go from being one of the top dogs in your class to now having to fight and start back at the bottom of the totem pole and have to fight your way back up to get playing time and compete with some other just brutes at the time. I mean, you talk about one of the guys being Devin Williams that was there while you were at WVU. So how did you go about approaching that, going from being the top dog in high school and being one of the more sought-after high school recruits to then having to restart and work your way back up the totem pole?
It was tough, man. I would say it was tough. Like I said, it was one of my toughest battles I had while I was there. Not having my mom around, like I said, I was like one of my biggest cheerleaders, my biggest supporter. We kind of did everything together. My mom was in my life. We started basketball up together. She introduced me into the game of basketball as my first coach. All types of stuff, man. So when I got to West Virginia and all that, stuff was going on, it was mentally hard for me. Also, losing her was hard for me to understand and continue to buy in. It was very hard, man, but it was more of a brotherhood thing. We had a collective thing that we were all trying to, accomplish. And coming in, you don't really think that, like you said, just coming from being a man at this school and that school and doing this and everything that you did before you got to college goes out the window, because you really get to learn team basketball and playing as a team, and doing things together to get, accomplish one goal. And I believe, like I said, that just came with me maturing over time and understanding, like, hey, this is going to take you some time. You have to get better. Everybody at this level and beyond is going to be, if not better, as good as you, So you have to get in the gym, stay in the gym, get better, keep a good attitude, continue to work hard with schoolwork, any and everything that you can do, so the coach can notice that, hey, I'm here too, and I'm here to compete, and you know why I'm here, So it was more of a shocker to know, we didn't get to play in the same style I got to play in high school, but it was still a fun, very great fun experience. Yeah, it was definitely a tough situation, man, going through that time where I couldn't, just play how I wanted to play and how I got to play again when I was in high school and how I did, professionally after college.
No, absolutely. I 100% understand where you're coming from with that. So let's have some fun. And I know we've been having fun with this so far, but just let's go back and let's bring up some fun memories in regards to your playing career at WVU. And let's look at that 2016-17 season. My man, in about a 2-week span, you guys knock off number 1 Baylor by a final of 89-68, and then 14 days later, Kansas comes to town. You guys lined up and beat them 85-69. So that 2-week span, you beat number 1, you beat number 2. What's your biggest takeaway? What's your biggest memory from that 2-week span back in 2017?
That they won just did us completely dirty, because why weren't we number 1 in the country after we beat the number 1 team twice in a span of basically a week and a half? I feel like, they should have put us at number 1. But, that's personal. We'll take that on. But basically, I would say, coming from those 2 wins, man, that we were dangerous, man, and we were ready. We were locked in that year, and the disrespect that Baylor did come in and do. I don't know if anybody remembers that game, but they were dancing on the court during warm-ups and all types of stuff. And we were just watching how they just, won. I think it was a Maui tournament that they won, and they became number 1 for the first time. And we was like, yeah, they got like 48 hours. It's over with, so enjoy it. But, yeah, when they came, we had a mission to blow them out the water, like, really bad, and we did exactly that. And basically with Kansas too, I believe that was I can't remember if that was after we lost to them or before we played them that year. Before. I know for sure it was before. Okay, well, yeah, we definitely that was a grudge match from last year, the year before, because we could never get them at home, man. It's like every time they came to our house, we had to make sure we did what we need to do and take care of business for the fans, and they'll know, like, yeah, you're not leaving out of here with a win. So that for sure was definitely a grudge match, and just guys locking in, like I said, for that goal and understanding that, hey, we're not losing to these guys at home at all, and we're trying to get that number 1 spot. And, they didn't give us I think they put us at number 5 or 6 and that following, rankings, but we were kind of heated about that as well. Like, yeah, they just going to keep on not, showing us love, but it was okay, man.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I don't know about you. I'd rather be number 2 than lose there, quite frankly. It's so hard to win in Allen Fieldhouse, as you know, and I think West Virginia's only won once in the whole history of West Virginia University basketball, men's basketball. One time have the Mountaineers beaten the Jayhawks in Lawrence. So I would rather beat them at number 2 than lose to them on the road. That's just me, but I digress.
Right.
So I know we've been talking a lot about your game and the memories that you have. What was the biggest change you had to make to your game following your high school career that had to translate immediately once you stepped onto the floor and played for Coach Huggins in Morgantown?
What had to immediately change was I had to put on some weight. I was about 210, 215 at Marion Franklin. I was a small, little, frail Kevin Durant build. I would shoot threes. I would run the floor. I was more of a, stretch 4. I was almost a 3, really, basically in high school. And, going into college, I had to bulk up, man. I had to put on some weight. I knew possibly, I didn't know if they were going to be playing me on the wing or not, so I had to be prepared at whatever position that he was going to put me at by the time I got there. But I was prepared to be, in the post or on the paint or in wherever he needed me at. But I know I did need to put on some weight because, that was going to play with grown men. I couldn't come in with high school weight anymore. It wasn't going to work too well for me.
There was another game I forgot to mention that I have listed in my head. At 2016 Big 12 tournament game against Oklahoma, you all win 69-67. That was the game that Buddy Hield thought that he hit the greatest shot of all time. Okay, walk me through that. Were you like, uh-oh, here we go again? Did we just lose to them in that fashion? Like, what was going through your head before they started reviewing that and you saw that bucket go in?
Honestly, I think it's still pictures of me. If it was pictures of me like just looking at the clock and looking at the replay the whole time. In that moment, it was definitely more of a, oh God, please don't say we just played that good of a game to lose off that one shot. Because we were out for Buddy that year. Anytime we played Buddy Hield, we were trying to keep him under his average and just really make him have a very hard game. So for him to hit that shot, man, we were kind of like, all right, he's definitely obviously going to the NBA. But we were kind of like, yeah, bro, that's not fair, man. And in that moment, like, my heart just stopped. I'm kind of like just looking at my teammates, looking at people in the crowd, but I'm just literally watching the replay. And I'm like, if this ball did not leave his hand, we can go ahead and go to the locker room. Like, game's over. I don't care how many times they watch it, but he didn't make it. It's our win, So by the time I think they showed about the first or second time, we knew the game was like we knew we won the game. We just hope they didn't cheat us, basically.
Fair, very fair. So
yeah.
So a question about your teammates, and I know the obvious question could be about Javon Carter and what he's been able to do and sustain since his days in Morgantown. But I think Javon's a fantastic player, one of the better players of all time. But I want to ask your opinion. When you look at the teams and the players that you played with, okay, who do you feel is a guy or a few guys, for that matter, that aren't really underappreciated but aren't talked about enough that deserve to be talked more about now that their days are over?
Oh, man. Jawan Staten.
Ooh.
I do not believe Jawan gets enough recognition or love that he should get. I would say Jawan, Daxter, Tariq. I'm definitely going to name a lot of guys from my team, myself, Brandon, just really our whole Sweet 16, like our whole little situation, I feel like we don't get enough praise within the school's history. I know like the Final Four did their thing, but I feel like, you know, they kind of forget how much of a role we were on for those years. I know we didn't win a national championship or go past Sweet 16 and Final Four and all that stuff, but we did a lot of winning while we were there. We did more winning than we did losing. So I don't believe we, as our team, don't get enough recognition. But that's just me. Again, that's my opinion. The other guy like John Houghton, of course, Javon, Gary Brown doesn't get enough recognition.
Good Gary Brown reference.
Yeah, Gary Brown. I can't think of anybody else, man. Kevin Noreen. I'm gonna say Sweat.
Kevin Noreen. You're giving us a Kevin Noreen reference.
Yeah, nobody talks about Sweat anymore. You know, Kevin Noreen was a beast. You know, we had a lot of guys come to West Virginia, man, but it's just a lot of memorable guys that I know for sure. My team and my brotherhood, you know, the guys that I play with, I feel like we don't get, you know, enough recognition because of, you know, we didn't get past certain things. But I feel like that team and those squads was good as the Final Four, if not better, you know.
I'm going to be honest with you, and this is all respect towards Kevin Noreen. I did not have a Kevin Noreen reference on my bingo card today, truth be told. Now, I want to tell you this because I have never shared this publicly with anyone, but I have a fantastic Kevin Noreen story. So it's the year after WVU had made the Final Four. So this would have been the 2010-2011 season, okay?
Right.
And the Mountaineers were playing down in Puerto Rico at that early season event in San Juan, Puerto Rico, okay? It's one of their earlier games. I can't remember who they were playing for the life of me, but WVU's up, and Kevin actually enters the game. And I can't remember exactly what happened, but let's just say he did something in back-to-back possessions that got Hugs so irate that it got the attention of Kevin's grandparents. Mind you, where we are sitting probably 7 to 8 rows behind the bench, and the grandparents are actually sitting in front of us. And my mom, who's a very bubbly person and a very great lady, she was talking to Kevin's grandmother. And when she heard Hugs just go absolutely ballistic at Billy Hahn and the rest of the staff, she looked at my mom and said, "That's what he's like?" And she said, "Oh, he's mad." I said, "Oh my!" Mind you, I'm like in the 5th or 6th grade at this point, so I kind of already know who he is and whatnot. But when she said that, I just like my dad and I still cackle at that to this day. It's one of the better WVU stories, just in regards to experiencing that. I mean, his grandmother was like, "Oh my gosh." Right.
Yeah, he's a sight to see for the first time. Nobody ever seen him. They're like, "Oh wow."
So,
yeah, man.
A couple more for you. I'm enjoying this conversation. So, along the lines of, you mentioned Tariq, and I think Tariq, to me, he's in that ultra rare class of guys that does not get enough talked enough about. And I think back, I can't remember the year that West Virginia won, and I can't remember if you were on the team or not, but there was a game in Lubbock, Texas, whenever you all were playing Texas Tech, and it was either in the 4th quarter or went to overtime, but he absolutely took over. I think it was an overtime game, and I remember he went down the right sideline on a fast break, on a one-on-one fast break, and just absolutely rose up. He didn't dunk it, but he rose up, got the bucket in the foul, and he had the meanest face on, and I was like, "Oh my, you don't want to run into him." So just in regards to Tariq, I mean, just that demeanor, that grit, that dog in him, I mean, that had to really fire you up whenever you're playing with a guy like Tariq, even though you were playing with a guy and one of the better Mountaineer players of all time in Javon Carter. But with Tariq, having a guy like him and that dog in him, I mean, that had to fire you up a lot.
Yeah, man. I mean, those New York guys was definitely, him and Tavon, Jay Sean Page, all the New York guys, that were on the team. They definitely, brought their own different intensity, especially on the defensive end. I love Tariq on the defensive end, man. He was a hound, man. Besides, I know a lot of people, everybody talks about Javon, but you got to think about that number 2 guy, and that was Tariq Phillip. Like, that guy is a hound. He'll hound you in practice. He'll hound you in your sleep if you sleep and guard you in your sleep. If they get hugged, they'll put you off. Like, he's a hound, man. I don't think he gets enough credit just for his defensive efforts, how he really upped his offensive game. That last year that he had, like, he came in, was more of a defensive, just a slasher, and then he really, upped his shooting, his scoring, his defensive and everything, and it ended up getting picked up by an NBA team, so a lot of guys don't give him a lot of praise, for everything that he did as well. Even Jay Sean Page, I would give Jay Sean too, we got to give a lot of Jay Sean a lot of credit as well. He did a lot for us as well in his little time period that he did, play with us.
Absolutely. So 2 more questions for you. Bear with me with this first one, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And don't come through my phone either and lunge at me either, because I'm gonna bring up a sour taste, man. All right. So we talked about that 2016 team. I bring up the name Thomas Walkup. What comes to mind?
Oh yeah. Oh God.
I'm sorry.
Oh God, Mr. Walkup. Yeah.
I mean, I'll be honest with you. This is another one of those memories. I remember watching that game in high school with a good friend of mine, and we were just so like we knew that you guys were upset about it, but man, that left a sour taste, as it probably did with you all. It left a sour taste in our mouth for a while. I mean, we were just like, man, I hate Thomas Walkup.
Yeah, random Mr. Walkup. He was so random, right? Nobody even knew who he was. Yeah, that loss was tough for us, man. We were really deep that year, really deep. We were supposed to do something special that year, man. I believe that was Tariq's last year. That might have been Tariq and Jay Sean's last year.
Yes.
I think that was Jonathan Houghton's last year. I think we had a couple guys that were there last year. So that definitely left, a very bad. Let me say bad. I would just say bad air in the room, but not like where guys were arguing or anything. It was just more of a, we kind of let it go. We could have did something special that year. We kind of worked hard. We had a lot of good games that year, and we just kind of laid it down when it came to those guys. And every time I see Mr. Walkup overseas or whatever, I still boo him. I'm like, I don't care.
So, actually, I follow up real quick. So you mentioned your professional career. What are you up to? I should have led with this early on, but what are you up to nowadays? Give the audience what Elijah Macon has been up to ever since he last put on a Mountaineer uniform.
Oh man, I have been being an adult, doing adulting stuff, man. I took a hiatus from basketball. For, like I said, I lost my parents. So I lost my mom and my father, and it took me, I would say, about almost a 3.5, 4 year hiatus from just playing basketball, doing anything basketball. I was not trying to do anything basketball, man. Just got to work, honestly, and just started doing work and stuff. Like I said, I graduated from West Virginia with landscape architecture, MDS, so it was more of a minor in it. So I didn't really get to do too much because we were doing basketball stuff so much while we were in school. So kind of just got into that. I always wanted to do landscape architecture and something with architecture in general. So I've been doing that. I moved to Atlanta for a couple of years, man. I was still involved with basketball. Obviously, I played on the TBT team. I played with, West Virginia team. I played with Adrian Broner's team. It was about Billions team out of Cincinnati. So I've still been playing basketball. I honestly just took a long break. This past year, I went and played, was supposed to play in the TBL League, which is an American league, kind of up under the American G League and NBA G League and all that stuff. Just trying to keep guys in the States that's not, trying to go overseas anymore. So I did that, ended up having a little leg injury. So I honestly, surprisingly, just got done with my first head coaching job that I wasn't even planning on having. Out at Washington State. Yeah. And I coached for the Grant County Red Tails. That's kind of over there in Oregon and Washington area. So me and Brandon actually played against each other, and I coached against his team with former. Well, he's not former. I don't think he went to West Virginia, but Coach Casey out of Charleston, West Virginia, who coached. He coached
Wayne
Brandon's
Casey.
Fort Bear team. Yeah, Wayne Casey. So I coached against Mr. Wayne Casey for my first time. That was a great experience, man. It was fun, man. It was funny and it was fun to go. Coach. I got to coach some pro guys from all over the place. Within the U.S. From Chicago, from Idaho, from Kansas, whatever you name it. I got to coach a professional team with my knowledge that I took from Bob Huggins, and I really had a good season. I would say I think we only had about 4 or 5 losses, and I believe I took over mid-season, so I didn't start the whole season. I didn't do a complete season, but I took over mid-season with some difficulties with the coach leaving the team mid-season, and kind of just picked up and took over for the guys that were listening to me, and came out with some big wins and played some good games. But I just got done coaching, man, honestly.
So real quick before I ask my last question, next time you run into Coach Casey, you're going to have to ask him about his days playing in the Kanawha Valley. Because when I tell you, dude, he is one of the all-time greats in this area. He is one of the all-time greats in the Kanawha Valley. Like his days at Stonewall Jackson, like he's a hooper. Yeah. I encourage you, just sit down, listen to him, and just listen to his stories. Because, dude, I'll tell you what, I've met a lot of people. He's top 5 in telling stories by far. Top 5.
Yeah.
So next time you see him, you'll have to just pick his brain, because he's a really good dude. But nonetheless,
so definitely, man.
Yeah. So final question for you, and looking at just West Virginia in totality, I know we've talked a lot about getting to the state, playing for the state at the land grant institution at West Virginia University, but when you look back on your career now, almost 15 years later, when you first started, what's the biggest thing that, whenever you do recall your time with the Mountaineers and playing in Morgantown, that will always just sit right with you, and you just always feel so calm whenever you do discuss playing in Morgantown?
Just being able to, come there and know that, for one, it's always going to be a family feeling. Even after I graduated, the people don't understand how big the alumni West Virginia University is. From Jerry West, from Rod Thorne, to all types of guys now, like Joe Mazzulla that's coaching for the Celtics, Deshaun that's with the Celtics helping Joe out, a couple guys from Fairmont State that's always used to be up in Morgantown. It's so I would say vast, massive, what's the word, of the alumni that comes from the school. Playing at West Virginia, man, changed my life, man. It helped me as a man in my adulthood now. I'm 32 now. I've been out of college, and I've just been taking everything that I learned in those 4 years that I did go there, and just, using it in everyday life, whether I'm in Florida, whether I'm overseas, whether I'm in California or Atlanta or anywhere that I'm at the time. I take my principles that I learned from school, from playing with Hugs, from playing with my brothers, from getting recruited from guys that I still talk to this day. It's just a brotherhood, man, and just taking in everything and learning and knowing that, Mountaineer love is different. Not everybody has that fan base, and you can come back home and do stuff like we did in Fairmont. I mean, not Fairmont, but in Charleston. My apologies to Fairmont and Charleston. But so we came back and just do stuff in Charleston and still be able to connect with people, and people still having pictures of you in high school. And when your, time was there while you were at West Virginia, is just very loving and, good feeling to come home and still have, a funny feeling, because you can go home and see your mom and dad,
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, Elijah, we appreciate your time as always. Thank you so much for your recollections and your memories on your time at West Virginia University and just playing for Coach Hugs and the Sweet 16 teams and all the good with some of the bad as well. I know we mentioned a bad on both counts with physical, and we won't talk about the other one, but nonetheless, we do appreciate your time as always. Best of luck in your future and whatever it holds. And again, like I said, if you see Coach Casey again, ask him and just pick his brain. He'll love it.
Most definitely, man. He's been trying to recruit me to come play on his team. So I'll definitely be in touch with Coach Casey and hit him up for sure.
Absolutely. Well, my man, again, enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you as always, and thanks again for your recollections.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Always, man. I appreciate you for having me, man. Thank you.
Yep, absolutely. There he is, Elijah Macon, former WVU forward, and now continuing his basketball career, whether it be in coaching or being recruited to play by Coach Wayne Casey, who, again, former Stonewall Jackson great. Coming up next in our next segment, we're going to be joined by former Charleston Gazette-Mail sports editor and WVU beat writer Mitch Vingle. We will be discussing who we think is the best, not greatest, the best WVU men's basketball coach of all time. As we'll do that on the other side of this break. This is All Ears.
As the game gets faster, stronger, more dynamic, your equipment has to keep up. Introducing the Riddell Axiom, the next evolution in football protection, designed to match the speed and strength of today's athlete. Contact West Virginia Riddell representative Casey Turley at 304-552-5960. Gear up, play smart, stay protected.
HD Media Sports is your one-stop destination for top high school and college sports coverage in the Mountain State. From Morgantown to Mingo County, our award-winning reporters keep you informed about your favorite teams and players, including exclusive coverage of the Marshall Thundering Herd and the West Virginia Mountaineers. Follow HD Media Sports on Facebook to stay up to date on the latest news, features, and game coverage.
Final segment here of the latest edition of the All Ears podcast, a WVU-based podcast here at HD Media and the Charleston Gazette-Mail. You can find all of our social media tags in the links below in the description. You can find us on Facebook on our brand new Facebook page, All Ears. Be sure to give us a follow on that to keep up to date with everything going on with the Mountaineers at the Charleston Gazette-Mail. And speaking of the Gazette-Mail, let's get back to our weekly hit with former Charleston Gazette-Mail sports editor and WVU beat writer, Mr. Mitch Vingle. Mitch, welcome to the program.
Yeah, buddy. How have you been?
Like I told you, man, it's been a whirlwind. It's kind of like the movie Twister when you see the cows going through the air and everything. I feel like one of the cows just trying to go through in the Twister, the tornado, I should say, has been like the last month and a half. So that's just kind of where I've been. But it's like I told you too, it's been a good experience. I went to Omaha, obviously, experienced a regional, super regional in Morgantown and Omaha, and then Big 12 Media Day last week in Texas. So it's all part of it. It's all part of the experience, as you all know.
Well, the big question for Omaha is how many shots did you have?
I plead the fifth. I plead the fifth. Nah, in all reality, though, off the clock, I probably had 8. I contributed 8.
There you go.
But at the same time, though, I had 8, but then multiply that by 5, and that was the number of shots that I bought. Because I also like distributed shots to people, and I also just told the bartender, I'm like, here's some money, give that towards West Virginia, and if a West Virginia fan comes up to the bar, give it to them, and they're like, okay. Yeah. So and a lot
you
of
and McAfee.
Yeah, don't 2 different pay scales, 2 different pay scales. But nonetheless, Mitch, it's good to have you back on here. I know it's been a while since you and I actually talked live. I know when we spoke last week for the Kevin Jones podcast, we did that a couple of weeks before I left for Big 12 Media Day and you went on vacation. But nonetheless, I know with this, we've had some really good topics this off season. And one of those topics has been, or was, I should say, the best WVU head football coach in the program's history. So let's take it from a different sport, but a similar question. Best WVU men's basketball coach of all time. I know there's a plethora of options that you could go down. I know you kind of hinted at you feel like you got a really good take. So I'll give you the floor. Who do you believe is the best, not greatest, the best WVU men's basketball coach of all time?
Yeah, there's a lot of ways to look at this, right? I mean, best can mean a lot of things. If you're going to go winningest, we can agree it's old school Fred Schaus, almost 80% wins, and Lee Patton at 778. And this will be a short podcast,
Yeah, shout out those.
Interesting story about Lee Patton. I think he was only there 5 years, 2 NIT appearances, which that was the thing then. But he died too early because of complications after a car accident. So, but anyway, although George King, Red Brown, the old school coaches, they were just a handful of seasons. You know, I've mentioned Guy Gracie in the past. Same with him. Of course, most wins, not winningest, but most wins, you know, Gail Catlett, 439, Bob Huggins, 344. Then it drops to Fred Schaus at 146, definitely top tier there. But the best, I think, is what makes this fun. The most popular ever, I think we'd agree, is Huggs, even after his incidents that led to his downfall. I think people still love Huggs and West Virginia and always will. But here's my final list best. Number 4, I would say Fred Schaus. He took the Mountaineers to the 1959 National Championship, lost by a point. It still hurts, and I wasn't even born yet. But he had the advantage of guys like Jerry West and Hot Rod Hundley.
They turned out okay.
W hasn't landed players like them since, and it's been a long time. Anyway, I was fortunate enough to meet him when he was the AD at W. They called him Stomper. Really big man, really intimidating man. Obviously, he's got to be on the list. Gail Catlett, number 3, tough guy to get along with, especially when I was in Morgantown. But you can't argue with his results. Most wins in school history, 11 times in the NCAA tournament, although 7 and 11 was the record there. Had some really, really nice years in the A-10 and a couple in the Big East, but really cratered at the end, you know, leaving unceremoniously at 8-20 his last year. He ran out the door. You know, you got to ding him a little bit for that. Number 2, Huggs. Speaking of dinging, you know, at the end. But he was a master motivator. Everybody, like I said, in the state loved him. Had that Final Four run that we've talked about before. That game against Kentucky when they, qualified for the Final Four was still the best game I've ever seen. Probably the best game West Virginia's best men's basketball game ever. After, you know, getting into the NCAA national championship, you know, he energized everybody with Press Virginia. That was such a fun time. Had some great seasons, but he also had some stinkers, you know, in there. And like I said, you have to ding him for the implosion of a potential second Final Four team with the talent that he was putting together, you know, and then everything happened, you know, with him. But still, number 2 on the list is damn good, you know, when you're talking about a program that's been around for forever and ever. But my number 1 hot take is John Beilein. In my career, there's only been 2 to 3 coaches that were ever talked about nationally as technicians, and that's Beilein, Catlett, and, Schaus a little bit. You have to give Beilein points for rebuilding after the Catlett Dan Dockage implosion. Went from 14-15 to 17-14 to the golden years of 24-11, 22-11, and finally 27-9, all in the Big East. You know, Elite 8, Sweet 16, NIT championship before heading to Michigan. I'll just never forget when Bobby Knight told the media his Texas Tech team hadn't played against one so well coached as they did the Mountaineers in the 2005 Sweet 16 in Albuquerque. I was there, and I just remember how it kind of blew me away, how much he respected West Virginia and how well coached they were. Before the game, he said W was one of the best coached, quote, one of the best coached teams and the best taught teams I've seen in a long, long time. Now, that's coming from Bobby Knight. The 1-3-1 zone defense, the 5-out motion offense were really things to behold, you know, let alone Pittsnogglemania and, you know, how Gansey and those guys came together. And you have to think how respected the man was because of Michigan going after him. And then from there, he went to the Cleveland Cavaliers as the head coach before, going to the Pistons. So just a smart man. And so best, I'll take John Beilein any day.
It's funny you say that because I'm not going to sit here and say I disagree with you at all. Because I think as much as people are latched onto Hugs, which is fine, I get it. Like what he did in his tenure with the Mountaineers should never go unnoticed. Like he had 9 20-win seasons, and he had one of those go for 30 wins. So that in and of itself is memorable because people still latch on to him like a little girl does with their doll. And I think the thing that many do, and I understand why, but at the same time, it's in the past. Let's try and move on, and we have to an extent. When I say we, I mean West Virginia fans. But people latch on to him, but then there's a lot of other people that latch on to how his exit went, and it seems like he's more remembered that way than he is during his tenure in Morgantown. And it's sad to say, but the harsh reality is that happened. I couldn't imagine if I spoke with him or you spoke with him or whomever spoke with him said, would you go back in time and change it? I guarantee you 10 times out of 10, he would definitely say he would change it 100%. And it's sad. It's a sad reality. It really is. But in regards to John Beilein, I think what you said is spot on. I was actually looking at the records from the latter years of Catlett. I mean, you look at his last 4 years, 10-19 in 98-99, then went 14-14, 17-12, and then 8-20 in the 2001-02 season. So
yeah, remember he didn't even finish that season. Yeah.
So that in of itself, you mentioned just the crater and everything. I was like, when I counted it, he had 11, maybe 12, 20-win seasons. And everybody remembers the UNLV game when they upset UNLV. You could talk about any other big game that he had in Morgantown that he won. But similar to Hugs, I feel the end for Catlett still holds him back. But on the flip side of that, he still won a lot of games. Like he like you said, winningest coach of all time in program history. The man won games. As much as the end hurts him to an extent, his resume is still fairly strong in the grand scheme of things. I think the other thing is too, between 1992 and his last year in 2002, he only led WVU to the NCAA tournament one other time. And that was whenever they had Jared West on that team and they beat Bob Huggins and his Cincinnati team in the NCAA tournament. So, and they were a 10 seed then. So
that was a miracle shot.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think the Catlett years, especially towards the end, are like how Huggs' years fanned out in regards to people remember the end compared to the good a lot of times. Now, granted, there's still people, like I know going on social media during the time period of you were going through 4 different coaches in about a 4-year span, and everybody's like, let's just bring back Huggs. I'm like, dude, that, and just from talking with people, there was still a sour taste, especially after Eiler and especially after DeVries, before they got Hodge. There was still a sour taste in many people's mouths in Morgantown that are closely knit and associated with the athletic department. So I never saw Huggs as a candidate, as sad as that is to say. I never saw him as a candidate, but I do think Huggs is one of the better coaches. I think he's definitely ahead of Catlett, but I am on the same street as you in regards to Beilein. I think how Beilein turned that around, take away the memorable games. I mean, he beats UCLA out in California, beats Wake Forest, takes them to the NCAA tournament a multitude of times. Actually, took him twice. Well, excuse me, only twice. I miscounted, but 2 of the 5 seasons that he was there, Now, granted, he did get snubbed in his final season when they went 22-9, but regardless, 2 NCAA tournament appearances. Those 2 NCAA tournament appearances are still talked about to this day. I even did a story last year. I remember because I actually spoke with him about that Wake Forest game back in 2005, and those memories are still vivid in his brain, and just the way that he spoke. And I'm not saying this is part of my answer at all, but just how he spoke and held himself during that conversation about something that happened 20 years ago, still fresh. It seemed like the game had literally happened the day before that he and I spoke. And it was just a really unique experience, just talking with him, chatting with him, getting to know more about him in that game and that season as well. But I think the way that Beilein turned the program around, and again, you got to think the time that he took over the program in his first season, in the 2002-03 season, WVU had some sort of national relevance in the middle years of Catlett, but then fell off, especially towards the end of his last 4 seasons, as I mentioned, 8-20 in his last season. He turned that around, and then what Hugs did with it, Hugs took his guys in those first couple of seasons and just stacked up wins and tournament appearances as well on top of that. So, I mean, again, you go from 04 to 12, they make the NCAA tournament all but one season, which was in the 06-07 season. Like I mentioned, that was Beilein's final season when they went 27-9. So I think the way that Beilein turned the program around, took it from, I don't want to say practically nothing, but took it from probably a box of scraps is probably the better way to say it, and turned it into a program that was nationally relevant. I think that is more notable than what Hugs did early on. Because you look at Hugs, I mean, Hugs in his first 5 years made the NCAA tournament, 5 years, made the NCAA tournament, which included a Final Four run in that 09-10 season. But that was still with some of Beilein's guys, especially with Deshaun Butler being at the forefront of that. Don't want to hold that against Hugs. It's the fact that it's even more admirable that he came in, took guys that weren't even his, and still stacked up. Like his first season, they beat Duke. And you look at that Duke game, Cam Thurman ran over Gerald Henderson. Future NBA pick, Gerald Henderson, ran him over like a locomotive. Mm-hmm. So I think how Beilein reconstructed the program and then took it from a box of scraps to national relevancy is admirable in of itself. And then what Hugs did and that's why he's number 2 in my eyes, he elevated that, but by the way that he elevated it, he just built off of what Beilein had done in the early 2000s after Catlett had gotten done. Agreed?
Yes, absolutely. I even remember, and Hugs, he admitted it one time after a game, and they were struggling and everything, and I think Missoula came to him and said something, and he goes, well, just run what John did then, and let's just win the game. So they went out and reverted back to whatever the ploy was that day, or whatever the Beilein strategy that he was referring to. And they went out and won, and I remember I was going, we needed to win, so I told him just go ahead and do it. But there are so many different things going back and forth because, Hugs was such a motivator. And I remember Missoula, whereas you had guys that played for John, and Missoula was ready to leave because it really wasn't his style of coach. And he told me one time that he was going to leave, but Hugs came in, and Hugs was the kind that would kick him in the butt. And he said, that's the kind of coach I need. And so he stuck around, and so it all worked out. So there's a give and take, between the two and between what happened there. But obviously, like you said, Hugs did springboard, whereas Beilein had to start from scratch. I mean, less than scratch at that time. And I forget who he beat that one season. Was it Florida in Charleston?
Yes, when they had Brett Nelson.
And everybody was like blown away that he could do that. And I think that was the spark, that led to the excitement around, Beilein's tenure. And he took it from there.
Yeah, one other thing the way that I look at Beeline and Hugs is like how I look at Fred Schaus and George King. So you look at Fred Schaus, he went 19-11 in his first season in 1954 and 55. And every single season that Fred Schaus was in Morgantown, he led WVU to the NCAA tournament. And you mentioned that 1959 national championship game against Cal. They made it. He had 5 consecutive seasons of 20-win seasons. He goes 21-9 and 55-56 and 25-5, 26-2, 29-5, and 26-5. And then George King comes in and he rattles off 3 consecutive 20-win seasons, 23-4, 24-6, and 23-8. And then in 63-64, that's where he kind of took a little bit of a hit, 18-10, and then finished it off with an NCAA tournament appearance in 64-65 and went 14-15. But the other thing, too, is the players, too, were just unbelievable. I mean, again, with Schaus, he had Jerry West, but then George King followed that up and had the other guy to wear 44, and that's Rod Thorne. Now, I shouldn't say it like that, but, you know, people know Jerry, but also Rod Thorne also has his number retired. So you have 2 of the most iconic names in Mountaineer basketball history playing in less than a 5-year span. So that in of itself is notable, but just the way I compare Beeline and Hugs is like how I would compare Fred Schaus and George King. And that's just kind of just where my head's at where I see that and everything else. But I truth be told, though, as surprising as this may be, I do agree with you with the John Beeline take. I do think Beeline in a lot of ways is the best, not greatest, the best WVU men's basketball coach of all time.
Well, that makes me happy. I thought I was going out on a limb there, and that makes me happy.
Trust me.
So we agreed.
Trust me, every once in a while you got to take a dive off the diving board and see where you go. Sometimes, you know, like myself, sometimes I hit concrete. Other times I find that pool of water, ocean, whatever it may be. But no, I agree with you. I do think the way that he constructed and then became the architect for making WVU a national storyline and just a national relevant team is definitely notable, and it still is to this day. So.
Yeah, and I just think all you have to do sometimes, if you just talk to the man, you can tell what a smart basketball mind he is. I mean, John Beeline went the full gamut as a coach, right?
Yeah.
He went from high school to junior college to, D3, D2, D1, all the way up to WVU, Michigan, to the NBA. I mean, he did it all. So,
yeah, led Michigan to, I think, a couple national championship games, if I'm not mistaken. Or am I mistaken?
Yeah. Oh, he took them to the Final Four, right?
Yeah, that's what it was. I thought for some reason, he took Michigan to the national championship game against Louisville, because that was the game that got revoked by the NCAA because of what Patino was doing, and then he also took him against Villanova in 18, because that was whenever they had like Jalen Brunson, Mikal Bridges, Josh Hart, and them, and then that Louisville team, that was the game that Luke Hancock hit like 7 or 8 threes.
Yeah.
So, but nonetheless, I mean, again, it's just his journey is just so. It just really just, you don't see that much anymore.
Yeah.
Like
probably won't see it again. Yeah.
Yeah, a guy that went from high school, junior college, D3, then went to Richmond before going to WVU, then Michigan, then went to the NBA. I mean, what an unbelievable run. So, yeah, I think outside of that, that's also very credible as well. So, good discussion, my friend. I do agree with you. John Beeline is the best WVU men's basketball coach of all time.
All right, buddy. I always enjoy this, so we will do it again.
Yep. Appreciate you, Mitch, as always.
All right, brother. Talk to you soon.
Yep, there he is,
Bye-bye.
Mitch Vingle, former Charleston Gazette-Mail sports editor and WVU beat writer. Thank you again for listening. Special shout-out again, special thanks to Elijah Macon for joining us on the latest edition of All Ears along with Mitch Vingle. And we will catch you all next week as we continue along our summer interview series. Got some good guests lining up and possibly lining up for you guys as we count down the days until the September 5th home football season opener against Coastal Carolina. And we'll talk more about that as the days and weeks go by. And again, be sure to subscribe to us, follow us on social media, and we will see you all next week. This is All Ears.
You have been listening to the All Ears podcast, powered by HD Media.